Chapter. All righty. Good morning. My name is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of nonprofit Utopia. For those of you who have been following us, you know that we are focusing on social enterprise all during the month of February. So we started off by helping you to assess whether or not this is for you. And when I say for you, our primary target is nonprofits who are thinking about adding a social enterprise. And when we talk about social enterprise, we're talking about an entity or a product or service that generates revenue beyond grants. So we're actually looking at a real business. But the lessons that we're learning are very, very helpful, even if you're an individual who is thinking about going through, developing a business that is a social enterprise. So if you're not with a nonprofit that is looking for social enterprise, don't worry, you're still in the right place if you're looking to learn more about social enterprise. All right, so after that, we showed you how to actually research your business idea. We showed you how to develop a value proposition. We showed you how to develop a lean canvas for a business model, not to be confused with the business plan. So today we're pulling all of that together, not so much in a theoretical sense, but we're actually speaking to a real live investor, right? Who has experience pitching for money, also evaluating pitches, coaching folks, through the pitching process and even beyond that. Shelby Parchman is the founder of In Urban Strategies. He actually coaches people to get their products placed in consumer markets, particularly with some of your major stores. He is also a foodie. So another one of his passions is helping folks who are in the food business get their products placed. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Shelby. Shelby, tell us a little bit about yourself before we really get into the meat. And today we're going to focus on how to actually pitch to investors and bankers and understand the nuances. But before we do that, Shelby, can you share us a little bit more background about what you do?
Sure, I love to, Valerie. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure when we get together. And for those of you who don't know, Valerie and I go a long way back, all the way
Yes,
back to grammar school.
yes, yes.
And so it's
I've
just
known
always
him since he was in kindergarten.
right, exactly. What'd you say, like 12 years ago,
Yeah, 12 years
right?
ago. And we did go to the same high school too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always good to reconnect with old friends, and always a pleasure to support you in the work that you're doing. So, yeah, just to give you a quick background about myself, I grew up on the west side of Chicago in the area they call K-Town, which is, to me, it was a great place to grow up because I learned a
Yes.
lot. But I started my career as a researcher in the pharmaceutical industry, and so I helped develop a lot of the drug products that are on the market now. And I say I'm so old that they're all generic now that the patents have expired. But that was really a lot of fun. And what ended up happening is I got sick of working in the lab, and I said I want to start a business. And so I did. I started a business creating laboratory products for a lot of the customers and pharmaceutical companies that I worked with. And once I caught the entrepreneur bug, it was no looking back. And I developed a business and I sold that business. And I said I wanted to dedicate my life to helping others start businesses and grow businesses. And so that's been the body of my work for well over the last 20, 25 years. And it's been a lot of fun in doing something like Valerie said, that I've done a lot of work in the food space, not because I wanted to, it's just that it naturally happened that way. And so I had an opportunity to invest in a company called Bronzeville Sausage. And it was a company that wasn't doing so well. And
Mhm,
we managed to turn it around, and we are
mhm,
producing chicken sausage products now for Whole Foods. And
mhm.
uh, don't tell them we told you this, but we're actually developing new pork sausage for them as well to be sold in many of their stores in the Midwest and maybe even on the East Coast. And
Ooh.
just completed a round of funding with a group of investors.
Mhm.
We purchased a beef jerky manufacturing company,
Ah,
and it's in
yeah.
downstate Illinois, and we're looking to move that to Chicago to create jobs here in the Chicago area, and looking forward to moving that along as well. But But and as you said, I do a lot of work through my consulting firm in urban strategies. Well, we work with nonprofits and with business development,
Mhm.
program development, and program execution, and all that keeps me busy. But it also is a lot of fun, so and I don't consider it work.
Yeah, yeah. And on that note, before we get into the meat of things, I keep saying, and we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. I guess I should have been in the ministry in the Baptist church, just like you got the Baptist, the Baptist clothes. I keep promising people we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. But I just want to, share a couple pictures from someone that we have in common. This is someone who is a client of mine. We're working on a proposal, but you actually have mentored him, when he was incarcerated, and he shared these pictures. And, I just want to let folks know that, the one thing I really, really love about Shelby is the fact that he has that gift where, he's the same person, um, regardless of who he is working with, right? He has the ability to work with kings and paupers and intellectuals, so to speak. Those of us who aren't so intellectual, and just bear with me, the computer would do its own thing when it's okay. Here we go. And Shelby has also come to my class and shared some wisdom with people who are developing their pitches and developing their business plans. And Shelby, did you want to share a little bit about what this event was? This is
Sure.
my
Yeah,
client.
yeah. So
Ricky.
I've done a lot of work, and what I like to say, I love to give back, and I love to volunteer my time. And so I've worked visited some prisons here in Illinois on a few occasions, mentoring a lot of the guys on starting businesses. And Val, you talked about that one Baptist brought up Baptist preacher. One of my trips to a prison, I had to speak right after this Baptist preacher. And I mean, he came up with a whole lot of fire. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to go after this guy. It's like, but somehow I managed to say things that really caught on to the guys, and they really wanted to talk to me afterwards. And so this was another occasion where I was working with the PERK program here in Chicago, and it was through CNI, and they have a program where they teach entrepreneurship in the prisons and helping guys who come out of prison start a business. So this is a pathways to reentry. And so yes, I was there, and they had a pitch competition, and so I had the opportunity and the pleasure, I would say, of spending a day in prison and working with
Mhm.
guys who are close to getting released, and helping them understand their business model and giving them some critique, but also giving them hope. And I always told them that when you get out, I couldn't give them my information per se, but I told them, you can Google me, you can find me, and you find
Mhm.
me on social media, and I'd be more than happy to work with you when you get out, because giving back has been one of my biggest passions. And even my organization, we love to give back to community organizations, especially those who are doing great work around economic development and violence reduction. And yeah, so this is a picture. I don't see myself there, but I was there,
I
and yeah, this was just a wonderful time helping the guys understand that, and I understand. And I forget his name, Valerie.
This is Ricky Hamilton.
Yeah, Ricky Hamilton. And I understand he came out and he started his business. And I saw that Go Blue there, and that's the name of his
Mhm.
business now, right? So,
Right.
uh, so the work actually was fruitful, and it looks like he was able to get a lot out of it.
Yeah. So now this person with the pen in his hand and looks like a suit, is that one of the mentors?
Yeah, that's one of the mentors. So it was a group of us who, most of them took a bus, but since they were coming from the city, but I'm already out west, so it didn't make any sense for me to ride with them. So I met them out there. But we had a lot of people from the Chicago area who are business leaders and do work in economic development to go out there and spend a day, give up a day of our lives to spend a day to work with these guys. And it was one of the most fulfilling days I've had in the last few years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And he did the same thing for folks in my class too. Every time I teach a business class at Roosevelt, I always bring Shelby in. He always sometimes even rearranges his schedule to make sure that he can come with us. So we definitely appreciate that. And I don't know where he finds the time, quite honestly.
I never sleep.
Oh, okay, so we got a couple comments. John, John Emanecker says hello. John is he's one of our members, and he is working on his business model. And yeah, John apparently was able to get out of his
This
meeting
meeting, yeah.
early. So we do have his video. We can't share the whole thing because it's 10 minutes, but we can also share just a few moments so you can get a sense for what he's working on. All right. Shall I share that video now, or do you prefer to do it a little bit
Yeah, why don't
later?
we just go ahead and share it? And I mean, I think this would be the good basis of starting a whole conversation about the perfect pitch.
Yeah. And I say
So we just see a few minutes of it, yeah.
okay. And I say the perfect pitch is the one that gets funded, right?
Not necessarily.
You would be a little biased. This is coming from a coach, right? All right. Bear with me. I think I got out of that video because I wasn't supposed to be in it at that time. So now I gotta go find it. All right. So I tell you what, if I got funded, I'll say I had the perfect pitch, and those dollars will do my
I,
talking.
I've seen some of the worst pitches get funded, and some of the best ones get turned down.
Really? Now, so,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting. So, what was it about the pitches that get funded, even though they're bad?
Well, a part of it is, it's the audience and how the audience perceives something, right? And
Hmm.
so sometimes even what looks like a really good pitch, uh, it's really just a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Got
And something that looks like a bad pitch, they hit all the points, right? So pitching, part of it is entertainment. You're putting on a show, but
hmm
the other part is like delivering a message
hmm
that that the investors want to hear. And so I've seen a lot of pitches that are like just so expertly done, and it's like this is amazing, but they have no substance. And I've seen some of the ones that look pretty bad, and the person kind of stumbles through it, but it had a lot of substance, and the investors like,
hmm
wow, I'm interested. So
Okay. Sheila Bew asks, "Is there a website for your guests? If there is, I could type it in the comments section."
yeah, it's www.inurbanstrategies.com. So it's just the company.com.
Of all times for me to not spell correctly. Okay. Let's see. Inurbanstrategies.com.
That is it.
All righty. So I can get back to the share. So we're going to share this video. Again, we're not going to go through the whole thing. And Shelby, too, you can tell me when you have heard enough, and then I will turn it off.
All right.
Hi, I'm John Emanecker.
Can you
I'm
hear
the
that okay?
founder of Social Confidence Evolution. It's going to be an
It has a
LLC.
bit of an echo to it.
Future will be a benefit corporation, certified
Okay.
benefit corporation. This is the business campus, model campus, and I just revised it today. Currently in version 2, and I am focusing on a niche. to help people become more socially confident. This will be a course membership site. And the people, customer segments within that I'll be targeting are quiet introverts, social anxiety sufferers, people who are shy, people who are uncomfortable talking to others. And these are people who are struggling socializing and really need to become more socially confident. Now, I know these are all different. As an introvert, I just feel more comfortable being alone or with a few people, re-energizing. Social anxiety sufferers, this didn't apply to me. I did have that fear of being judged about saying the wrong thing. And then people who are shy. I'm also in this category, or I was in this category. I just had a very difficult time getting out of my comfort zone. I belong to Facebook groups for all these different categories. And the thing that I've noticed is that people really do struggle with socializing, and that is something that they really want to do to improve their lives. I didn't know.
So that's enough, Val. We can do some comments based on that. It's
Okay.
Me
All right. Yeah, I will pause and then I will stop sharing. All righty.
Right. Yeah. So that was this business model canvas, and so it lays out really what's going in the pitch deck anyway, right? Which and that part of it is like, first of all, do you have a problem that you're trying to solve? And so he immediately started with, here's a problem, and the problem is that there's this social anxiety that a lot of people have, including myself. And so I was, when I was listening to this, I was like, okay, yeah, I get that. So the first thing, that if you're talking to an investor, they have to be able to get what you're saying. And so, some people, like when I'm talking to investors, especially I do a lot of work around food investing. And if you don't invest in food, there's no point in us having a conversation, right? Because it's like you don't really understand. You don't. That's not your niche, and most investors have one. So the first thing you have to do is, before you even start pitching, it's like, make sure you understand who your audience is, and if that the audience is not a food investor, you're probably just wasting your time. Matter of fact, one time somebody duped me into paying $500 to go before these investors, and I was like, "Well, I'm a food product. Yeah, that's cool." And then I get there, and it's like, "Oh, well, all they do is invest in tech." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." But so the biggest thing is that you can throw up maybe that first. You did it already. Look at you, right on time. So
I'm a good listener sometimes.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like, you can throw it up. It's already there, Val. Good for you. So the first thing is that you have to do is understand your business and how it makes money, right? And so what I see, and this is always a common mistake that most people make when they're trying to pitch their business. First of all, they don't really understand there's a need. Most of them, they make a product, and then it's like, now I'm going to go find a market for it. And that's the worst thing to do. But I see people doing that all the time. The second thing they'll do is like, I have this need. I'm like, I have celiac disease and I need gluten-free food. So then that means that the whole world wants gluten-free food. And that is not the case. Even other people who have celiac disease may not want your gluten-free food. So it's
Shelby, wait, can you pause there for just a minute? That
sure
brings me to another question. People say that you should, quote unquote, have a story, make it personal. And this is why you're going into business. I have this problem. I have this problem. Not the world has this problem.
No, see, that's, I think, where the mistake is made. So it's like, yes, you don't necessarily have to have the problem. So most people, that's where they start with their business. Like, I have this problem and I'm going to solve my problem for the rest of the world. When I approach it, I say, does the world have this problem? I could care less if I have it. So I developed like this line of the drinks, vitamin waters with vitamin D and calcium. And so I said, the world has this problem. Me, I love Coca-Cola. And people are like, you don't drink this? It's like, no. It's like, but you made it. Why did you make it? I said, because the world has this problem. The world needs more vitamin D, not me, necessarily. But I understand, if you want to expand into a marketplace, you have to understand that you can't be the customer because you'll never make any money. Your
No.
family is not going to be it should be your customers, and your
Mhm.
friends may or may not be your customers, but you
Right.
should care less. But what you're trying to solve is a bigger problem, not just your problem. So most people start off with, I have a problem, let me solve it, right? Or I see a product out there in the marketplace and looks like people making money, let me go make that product. And that's the worst way to start a business because that is not a true value proposition. So
Mm-hmm.
your value proposition
Uh-huh.
is, how are you going to find a problem that the world has, or at least a good portion of society, right? And then what can you do to solve that problem? Now,
Oh, that seems like a good segue. Tell me if I'm being premature. You think I should share the slides with the value proposition
yes, please do.
and and the business model, so people
Mhm.
who haven't been with me all of this time, can kind of catch up to
Yeah.
where we
Mhm.
are. Okay, so I'm going to share two slides, and the first one is the value proposition canvas. And I don't know, when I was in B school, we used to talk about the value proposition. We didn't go through all of this brainstorming. We just
Mhm.
answered the question, how are you different? Right.
Right. Uh-huh.
But
Yeah,
when
and so that's important, but it's not important enough because
right.
it's just being different is not enough. You have to be different in a way that either people who are not using your solution will want to use your solution, or people
Hmm.
who are using other solutions will feel that your solution is better. And everybody talks about it like it's an aspirin. It's like, you know, it's like you're
Right.
going to relieve somebody's pain, right? And so
Right.
aspirin is cool, but it doesn't solve all the pain, right? So then they made Tylenol, and then there's ibuprofen. And then it's like, well, that's not strong enough. Now let's do the codeine base. You see, so
Right.
there are different levels of problems and different solutions, but each one requires a different approach because and then you can take a step back, and then there are more like the holistic remedies and the natural and herbal remedies, right? And so there's so many solutions to a problem. The question is, who's the target market and what value are you bringing to them?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I can use our chicken sausage as an example.
Hmm.
And so it's not just it's chicken sausage. So why would people eat it? Well, they don't want to eat pork sausage. And it's like, I don't really eat chicken sausage, to be honest with you. I love pork
Oh,
sausage.
right.
And
What's the
so,
point? What's the point in
so what's the point,
red
right?
and bacon?
Right. So me, I gravitate towards pork sausage because I just love the taste of pork. And so why would someone why would someone then purchase chicken sausage? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, some people just don't eat pork, just as a dietary habit, right? And so they're looking for a clear alternative to pork. But also there are people who eat pork sausage, just say like myself, who says, well, if there was a good tasting alternative to like the fats that are in pork, I may give it a try. And
Hmm.
so our chicken sausage it tastes like a pork sausage. It has the tenderness, the juiciness, the texture of a pork sausage.
Now, what did
And
you have to
so
do to that sausage? How many chemicals did you put into a chicken sausage?
absolutely it's sold at Whole Foods. You can't put chemicals in
Ah,
it.
okay,
All
good.
right. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, so there's our value proposition. And not even telling someone this, we were selling some products at the UFC forum once at an expo. And a guy walked up to me and said, how did you get this chicken sausage to taste like pork sausage? And I said, there's our value prop, right?
Mm,
And so that's the quote unquote pain that we're relieving, is that
mhm,
there are people in this world, and a bunch of them, who are looking for alternatives to pork sausage, but they want the taste and texture of a pork sausage. It's just like, you look at some of these uh, Beyond Meat products and things like that, some of
yeah,
the imitation meats. What they have done is they put it to a point where it has the texture of meat. So
mhm,
people who, if they're trying to get people to switch over, people still want that meat
mhm.
texture and flavor, even though it's plant-based. So that's really the important part. It's like really
Ah,
thinking about you have to put yourself into the mind of the consumer,
mhm,
and so what value you bring in to the consumer. Why would they want to buy that? Why would they want to purchase your product? and continue to purchase your product. And so what most people do in terms of this value proposition is they give it their value and not the consumer's
Ah,
value.
that that's really interesting. So how do you find the consumer value? How do you get outside of yourself and know that what you have is valued
Well,
by?
what I tend to see a lot of times is most entrepreneurs, it's just a matter of like opening your mind and doing some research and believing in research. But most don't. What they do is like, this is my problem, and I'm going to show the
Mm,
world that the solution to my problem is their problem and the solution to their problem, right? And
mhm,
so what you have to do is, as an entrepreneur, is have a very open mind. That's what I said. Most of the products that I sell and I
mhm.
manufacture, I don't even use them because I'm not trying to solve my problem. I'm trying to solve world problems. Now, I've come to like beef jerky, but I don't eat it. You know, I don't eat it often.
Mhm,
But I come to, every now and then I'll snack on some beef jerky, but I still prefer
mhm.
some Doritos, you know.
That's interesting. And your background in science, I think, really helps you to test your models scientifically and not
Yes.
emotionally.
Exactly, exactly. And once again, that's where and people get stuck on like the emotion side of things, and then they say, okay, this is, and they get tunnel vision. It's like this is the direction I'm going in, and I'm not going any other direction. Even when the world tells you that no, that's not the direction to go in. And what I
Mhm.
tell people is when you start listening, the market will tell you where the needs are.
Mm,
A good example when we developed our vitamin water product is called Aqua D. We had one product that we're going to aim at kids, and and so we started doing these focus groups, and we let adults try it, and the adults were like, "Man, this is some really good stuff." And so it's like, okay, that tells me that kids aren't the only target market. And
mm,
what we did was we found that it was a segment of the population who liked very sweet drinks, but it was healthy because it had reduced sugars because we used
mhm,
some natural no calorie sweeteners,
mhm,
and they like loved it. So we had to change the name, and we made it a more generic name, and it
mhm.
actually became one of our best sellers. So you have to listen to the marketplace.
Okay.
And I'll give you another quick example. I was
Mhm,
volunteering for the mayor's office of people with disabilities, and they were passing out Gatorade. And I realized that Gatorade doesn't really have a flavor; it has a
mhm.
color, right? And so
Mm,
people graduate. I mean, although they have flavors, it's horrible. But people
right.
they gravitate for the color, and so they put it out on the table, and there was a bunch of children there, and they ran towards the blue Gatorade.
Mm.
I don't know what flavor it was, but they just first they went to the blue Gatorade and they just consumed that the first drink. That day, I called my formulators and said, "We need a blue drink, right?" Because it's like it could taste horrible. It actually tastes good, but it could taste horrible. But I said we need a blue drink because these kids love blue drinks. And then I found out that, and I'm sitting there looking, red is the next color. So it's really
Mm.
not about much as flavor, but it's about the visual. And
Wow.
so blue drinks are very popular. Red drinks are probably second when it comes to children.
So you made an empirical study, just observing, behavior, and
Yeah,
it
exactly.
didn't cost
So
you a
you,
thing.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what people have to do. Some of this research doesn't cost. You just have to look and listen. Even one day I was wanted to like do a Mrs. Fields franchise, and I just sat outside a bunch of Mrs. Fields cookies and just start making observations about like how many people walking in, like looking at sales and things
Mm,
like that, different times of the day. Because you need to know that stuff. You need to do your research before you actually embark onto a business.
okay, awesome. And I see here with the business model canvas, value propositions is front and center,
Smack
literally.
dead in the middle. Yeah, and that's where you start. If you can't get people to see the value that you're bringing to the table, you'll never
Mhm,
be able to make it past that.
okay. Now, this canvas, is this the basis of many pitches?
Yeah, a lot of this that's in here is that would be the basis. I'd say if we start looking at, and I have a slide on that, but if you start looking at
Okay.
the pitch deck, a lot of
Mhm,
this stuff would be in the pitch deck. I mean, these are the things that you want to take. and then you want to expound upon them in a pitch deck, and give a really nice presentation to some investor to get them to convince them that they
Mhm.
should give you money for your business.
Okay. Should I share your slide
Why
now?
don't we
Or
let's
wait.
go through these elements, because then that will feed right into what I want to talk about in terms of the
Okay.
pitch deck.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so, yeah, so we looked at how understand your business, how you make money, and that's the bottom line as the value proposition.
Hmm.
And who cares if it's your problem? It has to be somebody else's problem that you're trying to solve.
All righty.
And
So
so,
we want to go through
yeah, let's
to the
jump to
next
number
one.
2.
Okay.
All right. So have clear and documented financials. And so I put this number 2 because that's the sheet that people have. It's any companies I've looked at in terms of investing, even those making millions of dollars, a lot of them don't have clear and documented financials. And so
Hmm.
so what investors are going to do is they're going to start digging through those financials, and what you think looks really good, it's not going to look good. I was working with one client, and I was like, okay, what's your gross margin? He's like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't see any growth here. And he's like, oh, I don't calculate it. I just throw it, I'll lump it all into one thing. And I said,
It's
so
in
you don't
there,
even know
like
how much it costs to make your product. Yeah. You don't know how much it costs to make your product. And so why there's no point in me investing, because I don't even know if you can do that, or introducing you to an investor. So the first thing I said was go look at your cost of goods and separate those out so you know exactly how much you're making. But what I see in many instances is that if I ask somebody for a financial, like a profit loss statement, they'll say,
Mhm.
"Oh, give me a couple of days," and it's like, no, that has to be give me a few minutes, and I'll
Right.
send it over to you, right? And usually they're like trying to figure it out or put it together, or I got to call somebody. And as a business
Mhm.
owner, you should know your financials and understand them, better than anybody, because that's what you're going to get quizzed on. If you think about an investor, they want to know how much money you're making so they can know how much money they're making. And in many instances, most small business owners don't know how much money they're making. And in many instances, they're losing money. They don't even know it.
Right. So when you say clear and documented financials, what does that mean and what does that
So when
entail?
I look at your profit loss statement, uh, I see revenue, and you've
Mhm.
accounted for all your revenue. And I tell people too, if you're selling multiple products, you should have revenue by each product, right?
Mhm.
And the more granular you get, the easier it is to understand, for me to understand, and for you to understand where your business is going. So even like when we invested in took over the beef jerky manufacturing facility, I went in and I redid the entire QuickBooks and how it was laid out.
Mhm.
We look at things, and it takes a lot more work. But if someone comes and say, "How much money are you making in your Danville plant?" I can tell you exactly how much money we're making in Danville. I can tell you our cost of goods, our employee costs,
Mhm.
everything in Danville. How much are you making in your Paxton facility? I can do the same thing. How much you making at both facilities? I can tell you that
Mhm.
too, just with a few clicks of a button. And so those are the things that when you look at having clear financials and then
Mhm.
document it. So do you have receipts for that? Right? Or what's
Mhm.
this? What is this charge? You see this, and what is this in QuickBooks? Well, I don't know. It's like you don't know. Well, should it be in cost of goods? Should it be in operating expenses? I don't know. I don't know where it came from. And even worse, I've opened up books, and it's like, they use their business credit card or debit card at
Mhm.
Disney, at the casino.
Oh.
That doesn't look good for an investor. Say, oh, so you're going to take my money and have fun with it. Okay.
Right. So what do you do in those cases? You as a consultant, not so much an investor, but if you were consulting to those clients, would you help them straighten it out, or
Yeah,
you
we
would
charge them a whole lot of money to straighten it out. And that's what I'm saying. It's cheap if you do it right.
Mhm.
And if you do it wrong, it takes a lot more time, because someone has to go through every transaction. It's one instance, we in a couple, I'll say 3 instances I can think of now, that we had to go back and rebuild 3 years of financials.
Ow,
And
ow.
I say, and I to the point I said I ain't doing it no more. It's like I don't even want to work with you.
I
If
know
you're
what
that
that
bad,
means.
I don't even want to work with you. But I'm going through transactions. It's casino. Here's Disney. Here's like what is it, Six Flags. It's like no.
Wow.
It's
So the
like
code
start
means
from today.
right. And even
So
if they have a corporation, they have not they've already pierced the corporate veil,
decor,
right?
exactly. So, but those are the things, right? And so, uh, you really have to keep your business separate and keep your business financial separate.
Okay. Can I go to the next one?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So understand the type of capital you need. So some people pitch to investors and they don't have investor worthy business.
Hmm.
If you're saying I need $20,000, you don't really need an investor. Uh, but in many instances too, there's a couple ways you can do it. Even if you're looking for an investor, there's nothing wrong with getting equity, a debt financing as well. So, say for instance, if you're going to buy a building, that's an
Hmm.
asset. So usually that's easy to finance, and you don't have to give up a bunch of your business to get
Hmm.
somebody to buy a business, or to invest in your business, because you can go and get like an SBA loan for a commercial property, and I think in many instances it's only 10% down, and you get like 25 years to pay it off. So why would you do an investor in that on that side?
Hmm.
Um, in some instances, you may have some of your own money, so you don't have to give up as much as a company, or you can go out and get a bank loan for working capital or credit, something like that.
Hmm.
So usually, when you bring in equity, you're you're really looking to do some bigger things in terms of growing the business and investing a lot in marketing
Hmm.
and sales and increasing sales.
Okay, so typically, what might an investor look for versus a banker looking for?
Uh, Investor is looking for, and we'll get to that too. So
Oh,
why don't
okay.
we I'm going to
Good. Okay.
table that until one of our next points. That's point 6.
Okay. So, point four.
So point 4, and we're going to talk about this in depth. So develop once you have all this, you want to start developing out your clear and concise pitch deck, and I'll tell you the elements later on in the program.
Okay. Shall I go to number 5?
Yep.
Okay.
So this part, have a clear ask and use of funds. So a lot of times people go in, it's like, well, how much money you need? And they just throw a number out, and it's like, where you get this number from? Oh, it just sounds like a good number. But you have to be able to document what you need. So matter of fact, I'm working on a project right now where we're asking for like $4 million from
Hmm.
a group of investors. And so first of all, it's like our ask. We know what it is because we've shown with this complex financial model, this is how much money we're going to need so we don't run out of money, right?
Hmm.
And go out of business. And
Hmm.
then what are you going to use my money? What are you going to do with it? So we have capital equipment. This is what we're going to purchase.
Hmm.
We need working capital. And as you can see, because it's going to take us a while to ramp up sales because this is a startup, we're going to need working capital to last to this point, because if we don't have it, there was going to be a time that we run out of money that we're going to have to come back and ask you for money, and you don't want us to do that, right? So
Hmm.
just give it all to us at once. But but that's how you have to do it. It's like the investor want to know, what are you going to do with their money, and you understand how much you need and how it's going to be spent,
Hmm.
and don't put in like this super hefty salary for yourself, which I've seen a lot of people do. There's nothing wrong with paying yourself, but
Right.
you can't take $400,000 and give yourself $200,000 in salary.
Right.
And I've seen it happen many times.
And from your experience, what might investors require in terms of rates of return? I know
It really
the
depends on with investors. They usually look at your Ebitda, which is earnings before
Mhm,
interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
mhm,
But they usually look at some multiple of that. So just say whatever money you make, your net profit. Let's just keep it simple. I mean,
mhm,
just for simplicity's sake, some
mhm,
multiple of your net profit. So if you're saying that I have a net profit of $100,000, they say they look for a 6x multiple. So they're
mhm,
looking for a return of $600,000. somewhere down the road, usually
Mhm.
kind of a 5-year horizon.
Mhm. And then you as the owner, you're looking at a way out of that business, right? You're
Right.
looking.
So what you want to do as a business owner, even investors, at some point, and some people think it's like the craziest thing. Like, why would you want to sell a business? Because you get the money and go start another one, right? So it's more about when you investors are looking for you to add value to that business to make
Mhm.
it worth more than what they purchased for, so they can get their money back and then go and do the next one. And
Mhm.
to me, there's no fun in running a business that's like, you know, just flatlining. It's like
Mhm.
we're making good money, but no, that's not fun. Growth is fun. So I would
Mhm.
like to be in a business where we find the value, we extract it, we make the company stronger, we sell it, right,
Mhm.
and then go on to the next project. And so those are the things that investors like to do.
Okay.
And once again, are if you just want to hold on to a business forever,
Mhm.
investors probably not for you.
Okay. And you got me thinking, would you consider yourself a social investor? Do you own any social enterprises?
Well, the next one we do is going to be a social enterprise, but I like to look at it, everything I do, whether I label or not, label as a social enterprise or not, it always has some social enterprise component to it. So
Mhm.
even in my consulting firm, we work with, I tell them we charge our big customers a lot of money so we can not charge our small clients a lot. And so we can give
Mhm.
them highly discounted rates because that's part of our giving back. And
Right.
but also we're always looking at in the businesses that we own, how do we create jobs in underserved and under-resourced communities? Part of it is we have to make a profit. That's the way we stay in
Mhm.
business, and that's the way we can be social. You
Mhm.
can't be social without making a profit. So you do
Right.
have to put profit in the equation. But sometimes, and it doesn't cost you any more to think more from a social return.
Mhm.
The social capital return and doing good for communities that have been marginalized, and so that's what we look at all the time.
Yeah. What impresses me with the way you work, you're investing in those marginalized communities and you're still making money, you know.
Yes, that's it can be done. It's easy enough to do it, but once again, you have to have a business where there you've uncovered a need. I didn't realize that the world loves beef jerky, and so until I started, looking into this, and it's like, man, and there's not a lot of capacity. So I don't have to sell beef jerky manufacturing. People find this, and they come to me and say, "Hey, I I, I will give you money to secure a place in line for manufacturing." That's a good business to be in.
Yes, yes,
All
yes.
right. So number 6, think big or go to a bank. So if you're and that kind of touches on some of the things we talked about, is that as an investor, we're looking for big returns. We're not looking for 5% return on our money. Annually. We're looking for huge returns, and so looking for things that can be scaled up. And so a lot of
Mhm.
people they start businesses and they don't think about like how do I scale this business up. So if you haven't thought about that part of your business development, business model,
Mhm.
business plan should be thinking about how do I scale up. And because if you're not, then investors usually don't want to talk to you. And that's when you go to
Mhm.
a bank and say, give me a loan. I want to start this business and I'm going to pay you back at like 5% interest or
Mhm.
7% or whatever they
Mhm.
charge. And the banks are happy with that.
Mhm.
You have some collateral and you make your payments, you get your money and 30 days later you start making your first payments.
Mhm.
And that works for people, but you have to think about it. If you're not trying to expand this business and make it something big where the investor can see a sizable return on their investment, then
Mhm.
it's probably safe to say get the debt financing, go to a bank, and have at it. And that's okay because that's what some people are looking for. But if you're looking for investors, you have to think really big.
All right. Now, the thinking big, have you ever worked with nonprofits who were thinking about doing their own social enterprise? And if so, do they ever think big or are they more risk averse?
Most nonprofits tend to be more risk averse, and in most instances, I find that Most nonprofit leaders are not good at running for-profit businesses.
Mm.
It's a totally different way. People say business is business, right? However, in the nonprofit mindset, it's always been about what can I get for free? Like I need a grant,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't think more about. And as long as we're taking in money and we spend, it's this mindset was like we spend as much as we can, but we have a cushion to go into next year. We raise the dollars, we do it again and again and again. Wash, rinse, repeat, right? But when you
Mm-hmm.
start have to thinking about like profits, you have to think a lot more about how do we market, how do we get a good return on investment. We have to think more about the value proposition, more about the customer base. Because now instead of going to a foundation getting $250,000 here and $100,000 there, you got to sell $10 at a time or $20 at a time to a bunch of people, and that's
Mm-hmm.
totally different from getting funding from a
Yes.
large foundation. So it, sometimes those interests are competing, in just the
Mm-hmm.
mindsets, and so it's really difficult for people. For I see for not truth be told, most
Right.
nonprofit leaders to run a nonprofit, let
Right.
alone try to run a social enterprise or that's looking to make a
Mhm.
profit and to do good.
Okay. So how do you, and I guess you can't really make an entrepreneur, but how do you help people with that mindset? How do you help them do the mind work so that they have
So part of it that's where they have to be open to having people come in and work with them to help them understand the whole business model that they're trying to put forth. And once again, you usually get people who are not really that astute at entrepreneurship. So now you have to get them to help them understand, like, how do you develop out this business? How do you make it profitable? How do you do the research to make sure that there's a need for what you're doing? And then think about how big do you want this, and what type of returns to the organization are you looking for?
Mhm.
I mean, in this instance, you think about the Girl Scouts. It's like they
Right.
sell cookies, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming they make a profit off these
Oh,
cookies.
they
I mean,
do.
that's like a social enterprise, right? And they
Right.
put it back into the organization and do well. But they've taken it. You think about it, they went big, right? Because
Mhm.
they sell cookies all over the country. And people's like, I can't wait till those Girl Scout cookies come out. And
That is so true.
so that's how a nonprofit has to think about when they're doing social enterprise or
Mhm.
the Goodwill, selling clothes. They have that down to a science and selling, secondhand stuff. So
And it
number
really is a
seven,
science.
yeah.
Okay.
Number seven, network like you don't have any connections. The that's so saying that your network work is your net worth. That is so
Ah,
true. I consider my network to be pretty strong right now, and so I have people who are very wealthy come to me and say, "I have this idea. Can you help me with it?" Right?
mm,
And so once again, that's something that you build into, but you have to keep making those connections. And just a quick story about like my first big. And I tell people, you're starting a business or even a nonprofit, you need one person with a whole lot of money to be your champion,
mm.
and they're out there, and
Right.
they're not that hard to find, believe it or not. But usually it's just you run into them at something, you have to attend to events and things like that. But one, he started a private equity firm in Chicago, and we met years ago. And if I called him up today and said, "Hey, I need to get on your calendar. I want to talk about this business idea I have," it's like, come on, let's talk about it.
I have a
Uh,
question for you. Can I
mhm,
stop you there? So you call them up and say, "Oh, let's talk about this business." All right.
mhm.
So when you go to coffee or whatever, how do you have the conversation without wasting this person's time? What is it? How do you prepare for that conversation?
Well, you have your bullet points in your head, and you get right to the point. You a few niceties, right?
Right.
Uh, and then it's like you jump right into it. I have this, here's this idea I have, and but you have to be ready, and that's going to be number eight. And we can just jump to that anyway. You have to be prepared to answer tough questions because any investor, I tell you, if someone says, "Oh, great idea," where do I sign? They're not serious. Um,
Mm,
your presentation is never that good, right?
mhm,
You're gonna have to sell that presentation. You're gonna have to ask tough questions. And in my dealings, I've realized that people who don't ask questions, tough questions, they're not really interested in investing,
Ah.
or they're not capable of investing. Usually, matter of fact, those who are not capable of investing, or not interested, they usually take the opposite. They try to attack your idea as opposed to
Mm.
asking good questions like "It'll never work," da da da. As opposed to say, "Well, have you thought about your target market, and what about It's like, what happens if this doesn't?" Those are the questions, the probing questions, to make sure that you've done all
Mhm.
your research, and then they'll say, "Well, let's get back together." Get some of those, and you
Mhm.
don't have to have all the answers, but be
Mhm.
ready to get back together and answer the other questions. So,
Yeah, it sounds to me too, as you were talking, the investor is really looking to be your partner, not
yeah,
necessarily your taskmaster.
right, exactly. They don't have time to run the business. As a matter of fact, they want to trust you to run the business, and a lot of it is selling yourself. And you mentioned earlier, you do have to have a good story though. And I tell everybody, and it doesn't have to be necessarily about yourself, but you got to have a good story to start it off. And matter of fact, the best people who pitch always start off with a really good story. That's
Mm.
To me, that's one of the perfect pitches. It's like you got to have a good story. I tell people I have like 100 stories, anytime something triggers one, I say I got a story for that, because people like stories, and they like,
Mhm.
because it tells you a lot more about it tells them a lot more about your experiences and how you would handle things.
Oh, I love it. So, if you're not a good storyteller, how might you get that skill?
Practice that. I
Wow.
mean, it's just really about, and here's what I tell people: it's like, you know, I have these pieces of paper, but I don't read them. I just look at them for like prompts, right? And so what
Mhm.
you should be able to do is you should have, because I tell people I can take like a PowerPoint slide with 8 prompts, like I have here, and I
Mhm.
can do a 1 hour presentation on it, like I'm doing
Yeah,
now.
like you're right. Shelby, this is terrible. All morning, you'll say something. I'll be like, well, I was just thinking that, and then he says it.
Yeah.
That's a
So
scary thought, but maybe it's a good thought. Maybe my mindset is changing.
right. So but and it has to be natural, right? So it
Right.
can't be like, well, I don't understand how your business, you can't do that, right? The story has to flow, and it has to be natural. So part of it is, I tell people, have bullet points, and I it usually sometimes it's like Shelley's about to give a speech, and I write down like 5 words, and
Wow.
it's like right before, like
Right
20
there
minutes
in
before the
hand,
speech,
little cheat sheet.
and when I say, here's my speech, and my team's like, oh, here you go again, right? But from those 5 prompts, I can come up with a bunch of stories, or it's like, tell this story, tell that story. But part of it has to come naturally in you. But being a good storyteller help you in anything you do in business.
That's true. And even if you decide not to do social enterprise, the same principle applies, for nonprofits when
Right.
you're raising
Yeah.
cash.
And
And
social enterprise is even more important, because those stories are what tug on the heartstrings of investors and make them want to give money, just like the
Mhm.
nonprofits.
Right. So is it okay now to share your
Yep.
PowerPoint slide? Okay.
Yeah, and I know we are running short on time, so we talked a lot about this. So pitch deck outline. This is what we're doing here. So number one is the elevator pitch. That's the story, right? That's the story
Mhm.
you want to tell, and that's you always want to lead that pitch deck with a wonderful, captivating story that's going to grab someone's attention. And that's what I'm saying. It's like you have to have a lot of energy, because if you don't, a lot of times people just like kind of zone out. And so I like to look at it as like, you about to get some good stuff here, and people on the edge of their seat, and start off with a couple of jokes too. It doesn't have to be like made up stuff all contrived,
Mhm.
but inject a little humor into the story. We talked about the problem, and is there a market opportunity? Is there a market opportunity for that problem? And so that's the next thing you want to talk about. Here's a need that I uncovered. It's not my need, but it's like a lot of other people's needs, and we're going to solve that. And then think more about the market broadly. As they have this concept, what's the addressable market? And it really depends too on how you plan to sell. Are you going to be local? Are you going to be regional? Or are you
Mhm.
going to go nationwide? Are you going to do retail outlets? Are you going to go online? You know, different different sales channels have different market opportunities
Mhm.
and different ways to approach it. Uh, and then your solution to it, right? And it's like, yeah, Here's the opportunity in the marketplace. 10,000, 20,000 people have this problem. If we can just solve the problem for 1,000, we're all good, right?
Mhm.
And here's our solution to do that. So, just in the case of the pitch, the business model canvas we looked at that John submitted, you know, great problem statement. There are a bunch of people in this world who has that social anxiety disorder, and now here's my solution to help them. Now, what I would encourage John to do is think more about the solution, but also think more about having a little more confidence. And when he talks about it, because if I have social anxiety disorder, I want to see someone who has a lot of confidence now, and to say that I want to be that like that. That's the solution. I want to be like him. And so that's when they'll pay you the money. But
Okay.
if they see themselves on the same level as you, it's hard for them to say, well, what's so different? What's the value?
Got it. So it sounds to me too, when you think about solution, you're also looking at the transformation. What's the transformation people are going to get as a result of
Exactly.
using
Yeah,
your
if you're trying to sell like what John's trying to sell, it's like so. But really, the solution is you're going to go from someone who's afraid to get up in front of people and speak to someone who's just fire, got fire in their blood. And if you do it really well, you say your friends will say, "I had no idea you were like
I know this.
that."
I thought I've been knowing you all my life, and this is the first I'm hearing of it. And that's
Right?
cool, though.
I do a good job of presenting. So,
Yeah, yeah. I want to be like
uh,
you. I told you that before. I want to be like you when I grow up.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's the good and the bad, Val.
Well, that's all right. You learn. You
Right.
learn.
Yeah. So then, Johnny talked a lot about, his go-to-market strategy and how he's going to
Mm,
penetrate the marketplace in his different sales
mhm,
channels. Traction is like where are you now? And where
mm.
you plan to go. So if you're selling a retail product, we're in 20, 30 retail outlets. But here's our plan to get into another 1,000. That's what an investor wants to hear. How are you gonna what's the traction you have now, and then how are you gonna get there? And then the projections is how much money you're making now and how much money you're gonna make in the future. And then the management team. Here's what I'm working with. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bunch of people who you have on your team paying, but it could be advisors as well and unpaid
Oh,
people. But they want to know that you've surrounded yourself with smart
mhm,
people who can help you get to where you want to go. And then to close, and so I can't take credit for this, but I have a guy at work. His name is Bob Gillespie, and we talk pitch classes together. And he
mhm,
talks about how this whole pitch is a story within itself. It's a drama. It builds up, and then it has this. I forget all my English classes, but it has this climax, right?
all
And
right.
then it has this crescendo, and it's like, and then you come, and when you close, your close should be so hard that the investor should say, "Here, take my money," right? And
Yeah,
so, that never really happens. But you
mhm,
want them to think like, "Can we talk more about this?" And that to me is
mhm,
like, "Take my money," because now you gotten that interest, and you're going to get that second meeting. But that
mhm,
close is one of the most important parts of it. Is that you have to and when you finish this whole story, you have them
mhm,
excited. You have to then do that hard close and say, you know, here's what we have,
mhm.
and here's what we're going to do to change the world.
Yes,
Give me your money,
I
and don't
love
be
it.
afraid to ask for it.
I see you came from K-Town. You know how to
Yeah,
ask
I
for
know. It's like, well, and that's like spend like 18 years of life in K Town, and you'll understand that too. So,
Now the question too, or I put like this, one of the things that I see people usually have a disconnect with in their business plans, the market opportunity, their assumptions about the sales that they're going
yeah,
to get and the financial projections that they
hmm
usually kind of miss
yeah,
that.
yeah. Because what I see is everybody is gonna make $1 million their first year in business. That's what I
Mhm.
see. The market is begging me to bring this bring it out, and sell this product or sell this service. And so, yeah, it's most people are like, they have the unrealistic expectations of what their business is going to do. And so those unrealistic expectations go into their financial projections. And in many instances, you look at it and you say, you don't even have enough inventory to sell this much. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're saying you're gonna purchase like $10,000 worth of inventory to sell like $1 million worth of product, and it's like that makes absolutely no sense. Or it's or their target market is very broad. One
Mhm.
was like, I'm selling women's shoes. Well, who's your target market? Women. And it's like, no, it's like you have to think more about what what age, where they live, what style. It's just so many things. And so it's not
Mhm.
it's not just as simple as like women are my target market. Because an 18-year-old and a 60-year-old wear
Right.
different styles usually. So
It depends.
yeah, I know. I say usually, right? So
Oh.
Sheila has a question, example of a tough question.
Mhm.
The toughest questions I get when I'm talking to investors is really about the financial projections. And it's like, how can you prove that this is going to make the money you say it's going to make? And matter of fact, this is what I've been going through. One exercise with every time I do a project, the tough questions are usually around financials. Secondly, it's usually around the market, as you talked about, Valerie. How do we
Mhm.
know that many people out there? Prove to me that you can get 25% of the capacity of this plant sold before we break ground. It's like
Wow.
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, right?
Right.
But you still have to go through those exercises and make them feel comfortable that there's a market there, that you can actually go in there and get the sales, but that the financials make sense. And so
Mhm.
use, and as I said, Sheila, usually the tougher questions around the financials and proving out that financial model.
Right. Crystal Overton, if you're still here, um, hopefully Shelby can answer your question. I guess
How
she'll
long
have.
should it be? I'm thinking the pitch deck should be no more than uh 10 to 15 slides. And some people give you 3 minutes, some people give you 10. I think 7 is good enough. And when you get to 10, you're trying to stretch to say more, and you usually
Mhm.
say the wrong things. 3 minutes isn't it. And so most people spend 3 minutes trying to tell the story. So keep the story down to a minute and a half. And don't say it fast, but just keep it clear and concise.
Oh,
But yeah, I would say practice practice a 7-minute pitch.
okay. Now, do you have a process for whittling down all of that detail into 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes?
Yeah, so part of it is like what we do is we we lay out our pitch decks, and then we assign times to each name, each section or each slide. And so then we go back through those slides, and then we start practicing and saying, okay, you have a minute and a half to tell the story. And usually, like when we work with people, like 3 minutes later, they're still on the story. I was like, cut. And so then we start whittling it down to the most important components of the story. Because there's some areas of the pitch deck you don't have to spend as much time. So it's more about spreading out the time
Mhm.
to where we feel that it's spending enough time on those things that the investors find really important. But it's really just like if I have 7 minutes, let me lay out each slide and assign a time to it, and then try to get it within that time.
Okay. And Crystal asked what your name was. So I'm just sharing with our audience that we're
Hmm.
speaking with Shelby Parchman, the founder of In Urban Strategies LLC. And if you, I think yeah, I should have a banner with his information and I'll post that. And there's just one more comment I wanted to share. I know we're over time, but
Hmm.
John was listening and he said,
Good, good.
he says, thank you. And
Mhm.
John, if you're still there, I'm recommending that you follow up with Shelby. You guys have a lot in common, and he can give you insights into your business model and how you can structure it as a social enterprise that makes money and all of that stuff, and sharing how you can be more succinct in your model and communicate your value proposition and all of that good stuff. So I guess offline I could,
Yeah,
introduce you guys.
yeah, that'd be great.
Mhm. All right. I think I think those are all of the comments. Yeah, those are all the comments. And Shelby, I just want to say thank you so much. Every time I invite you to speak to a broad audience, I learned so much.
Cool.
So
And you learn that you can easily do an hour show, right? Without a script.
yeah, you can. You can. Let me make sure that I got, Crystal, very early on, this is not a reference to you, but you made a comment. This is not in reference
You
to
know, it's the truth, and I see that a lot on social media. It's most of the smoke and mirrors, so don't believe the hype.
right, right. So she can relate. I guess she's been there, done that. She works in an environment where people, Chicago got their name, the Windy City, not because of the wind, but because we talk
The
about it.
politicians, yeah.
Yeah, the politicians and all of that talk. All right, so I think we've come to the end of our show. Is there anything that you wanted to say in closing, Shelby?
I just always like to wish everyone Godspeed in terms of starting and running their businesses, and certainly enjoy being a resource for everyone. And I appreciate those who took the time out of their busy schedule to spend
Mhm.
with us for this hour.
Well, thank you. And I just got to tease you. I'm looking at your shirt. I know it's a Nike swoosh, but I think I always, from time to time, I won't say always, from time to time, I reference you as Captain Kirk. And you look like you're on, on Star Trek. Guy, that's
Oh
what
yeah,
swoosh looks like. And
yeah.
and you remind me of Captain Kirk. If the rules don't work the way they're intended, you make up your own rules, like
That's right.
like any other entrepreneur would do, at least a successful one. Oh, we got another comment. Claudette.
Oh, hey, Claudette. I know Claudette.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, so we got somebody we know in common. And she's been following us. And Claudette, thank you so much for following these little talks on social enterprise. And it's great that you and Shelby have a chance to kind of connect over the internet. All right. I think that is the end. All right. So again, thank you to everyone for staying a little bit late. That's a good indicator that there is a market for Shelby Parchman's wisdom. And
Good.
that we still have people who've come through and they're still here. And without further ado, I am just going to end this broadcast. But if you want to see the video, go to our YouTube page. It'll be available almost immediately after us closing. So again, thank you so much. And I will see you next week. On Monday, we will have Mark Lane. Mark Lane is an internationally known investor, attorney, as well as a specialist in social enterprise. And we're going to be talking about the legal structures of various social enterprises and how you can integrate those social enterprises with your nonprofits. All right, so hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.